Hi, Geoff Lawton here, and my sympathy goes out to everybody who's suffering out there with this virus, and especially the people who've lost people. It's a terrible situation, and it's gone global faster than anyone could ever imagine. We were caught in Saudi Arabia. Suddenly we couldn't fly out. Eventually we got out through London and Qatar, and now I'm stuck in Melbourne because I couldn't get a flight home to northern New South Wales. Melbourne was my only option. And here I am, downtown Melbourne, in quarantine, in a hotel room. Nadia, Latifa and I, 14 days, not even connected to the outside world. These windows don't open, no airstream. And we're almost a week through, and I'm starting to work online. I want to help. I put out Instagram, and I particularly put out Facebook, asking people, do you want to ask me any questions? And I'll do my best to answer them in my particular style. So here we are. All kinds of questions came in, and I'm going to do my best to answer as many as I can in this session. And we'll see how many sessions I can do. So we'll try and organize it so you can ask questions, and we'll try and answer particular questions and themes. And if you want me to do a 5 to 10 minute rave as one particular subject that you've always wanted more information on, if I can do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it out there because I think we need permaculture more than any other time now. It's so obvious that these disconnects from nature give us these vulnerabilities in our health, in our communities, in our economy, and in every single way you can imagine. And permaculture has the answers, and that problem is the solution. So here we go. Let's go ahead with our first question here. The first one comes in from Sam Knoll. And Sam wants to know, what are your top 3 recommendation books on permaculture? Well, I'd have to say the Permaculture Designer's Manual by Bill Mollison is the definitive work by design. And then I think my second favorite is Bill Mollison's book on ferment and human nutrition, which is a very special book about how we preserve food and add value to it. And it really comes in line with today, the ecosystem of the gut. And we know now that that's what feeds us, is having a healthy gut ecosystem. So it's very relevant right at this moment. It's not just the food we produce, but it's the food we have to store in valuable ways. So a very, very relevant book, fantastic book, totally underrated. And then I'd have to say Isabel Shipard's book, How to Use Herbs in Your Daily Life, because it's my go-to book. I think Isabel was the best herbalist that ever lived. And she's passed on now. She's a great friend of mine and a great friend of Bill's. I wrote a recommendation on the back of her 3 books she wrote. She wrote another book on sprouts and another book on survival foods. They're all classics. But How to Use Herbs in Your Daily Life, what a go-to book. I always thought I was going to give her the best recommendation ever. And on all 3 books, Bill Mollison beat my recommendation with a better recommendation in my opinion. So check those out. Permaculture Designer's Manual, an absolute encyclopedic classic. This is the book I teach from in my permaculture design certificate courses. And then the book of Ferment and Human Nutrition, also by Bill Mollison. And then How to Use Herbs in Your Daily Life by Isabel Shipard, the classic herbalist. Okay, Justin Murphy has a question now. How would you convert land from paddock to vegetable production? Well, the first thing you've got to do is disfavor the grass, so you end up in a germination condition. You may have to decompact it. So depends on the size of paddock you want to convert. And then you need to know which climate analog you're in. The cooler, humid climates, you can have a larger vegetable garden. The tropical climates, much smaller, and the desert, smaller again. Now, when I say smaller, it needs to be surrounded by a beneficial ecosystem, and that can be a productive perennial ecosystem, i.e. a food forest. Okay, but let's look how we do the conversion on the paddock. We've got to disfavor that grass. We can go over and decompact it with a tractor and a deep ripper, or we can do it with a garden fork. The classic garden fork is a nice decompacting instrument, or you can do it with a broad fork today, like a giant 2-handled garden fork. And you don't want to turn it over, you just want to decompact it. Now then you need to disfavor the grass. You either need to rotary hoe it and turn it over. If you do that, you want to convert it into a cover crop, right? So lay down a cover crop, which is usually a leguminous crop that farmers use to green manure their soils, and they're at an agricultural price. So go to your farm supplies, ask them what kind of green manure crops they put down, and oversow it 4 times thicker than they say they normally would. So it doesn't matter if you're going into permanence, overseeding your green manure, your cover crops is a great advantage. You're only going to do it once, and once is fine when you've got permanence as an end result. Or you can actually, if you've got a smaller area, you can do your decompaction. You can lay down some manures if that's all you've got. You can lay down some compost if you've got compost. Of course, you can make compost in 18 days, and I've got videos on how to do that. Or you can lay down some vegetable scraps, chunky vegetable scraps, some food scraps, chunky fruit and vegetable scraps, with manure, with compost if you like. Then lay down really thick newspaper and cardboard, or even old carpet, works fine. And that's a sheet mulch that actually makes the grass rot. So you can lay it right on top of the grass. If it's really tall grass, you might want to mow it first. Lay down your organic matter, manure, compost, veggie scraps, or all of them, or just veggie scraps if you haven't got anything else. You've laid down worm food, right? And then you've covered it with a sheet mulch. And I mean thick newspaper. I mean Sunday edition, front to back cover of the Sunday edition newspaper, overlapped. Lay it down thick. Too thin we know about. Too thick is almost impossible to achieve. You could lay down old carpet, make sure it hasn't been sprayed for fleas or has got any chemicals on it. You could lay down old clothes. You could lay down all kinds of organic sheet mulch. If you've only got banana leaves in the tropics, you can lay down lots and lots of layers of banana leaves. The idea is to cut out the light, rot the organic matter in position with the roots of the grass and the grass itself all becoming worm food. You've stimulated the soil life. You can't feed plants organically. You feed the soil organisms organically, and they feed the plants. So think about this. You're feeding the soil. The soil is an organism that's all mouth. And the fungi in the soil eat the wood, but you're not trying to put a forest down. Forests are fungal dominated. Vegetable gardens are bacterial dominated. The 2 main life forms in the soil en masse. There's 50 million genus of fungi, 50 million genus of bacteria. We know nothing about them. Know a little bit about 1% of them. A little bit about just 1%. 99% we don't know anything about at all, but we know it's full of life. And if we favour the soil life, all this living, dying, excreting and exchanging of materials is what feeds our plants. So we're feeding the soil. You want to quickly go from paddock to vegetable garden in a quick snap, then you want to lay a food layer down, then a sheet mulch, and then deep mulch. And if you want to do it quick, we're talking 6 to 8, 10 inches of straw or just paddock hay, or any kind of chop and drop mulch that's not allelopathic, not disfavors the growth of other plants. So straw's fine. Don't worry about the seeds. Don't worry about the weed seed in it. We're going to go more fertile than that. We're going to go beyond the fertility of weeds. So lay it down thick. Right? And then make holes in your mulch, put a little pocket of good soil in there, or compost if you've got it. Put your seeds deep down through towards, you just scrape out a hole, coffee cup size, down to your sheet mulch, punch a couple of holes in with your penknife. It's all wet by this stage, you've wet it all down. Pour in your good soil or good compost, put your little seedling or seed in there. Off you'll go. With that much mulch, it will take 1/50th the amount of water that bare soil would need. And also, it will be warmer in winter at the soil surface and cooler in summer. So you've laid down something that the soil organisms feel like a giant forest has suddenly landed on top of them with all the beneficial functions of a forest, but you've assembled it fast. If you do cover crop, what you want to do is you want to rotary hoe it over or dig over all your pasture grass, turn it all upside down, smash it up a bit, then seed into it and water it and get a quick cover crop that dominates the whole thing. And there's no room for weeds. There's no room for the grass to come back through, because this fast growing legume, it's going to be a pea or a bean, it's just going to take over like some crazy thing. And you're going to chop that down as chop and drop mulch and plant into the holes and leave the green cover taking up most of the space. As your crop comes up, you cut more and more of the green manure crop as a chop and drop to the soil. That's fast function. That moves quick. Right? You've just got to have the confidence to put it down. Now, when you're deep mulching at 6 to 8 to 10 inches, you're putting one normal bale of straw over 1.3 square meters. It's pretty thick. But if you're scatter mulching over a cover crop seed, so you throw your cover crop 4 times the density they tell you at the ag supplies, 4 times the amount of seed per area, then you put one bale of straw down as a very thin layer to 40 square meters. That's much less when it's just covering the soil, and you just can cover the soil so you can't see the soil itself. But if you just scratch with your fingers, the soil's exposed. It's just enough to actually increase the moisture level at the soil, cover it up from birds, and that little bit of extra moisture germinates it faster. And also, it's not too thick to suppress the germination. So we call it scatter mulching. I don't think there's a name for it. It's a little bit like, hand hydro mulching. So 4 times the seed, then the scatter mulch, water it, wait for the germination, only takes a few days. Once it's up a bit, you can start planting into it, making little, clear out a little hole, put your vegetable seedling or your seeds in there, and keep your eye on it, because the legume is going to grow much faster. The cover crop, the green manure crop, is going to go much faster than vegetables. You cut that back with a pair of kitchen scissors, and you're in control quick. So both these systems work. You might want to shape garden beds first. If you're in a humid climate, you might want to shape up some raised beds. But if you're going broad over that paddock and you want to get a quick crop and you want to get a result, those are 2 easy organic methods, and both of them are feeding the soil, because the cover crop roots stay in this lovely dendritic pattern in the soil as you cut it back to your vegetable, favouring your vegetable production, and they feed the soil organisms. So it's all about feeding the soil organisms, and over time you get a better and better soil and need less and less inputs, and it gets more and more efficient with less energy in to more energy out. Over time the soil increases in quality and actually quantity. Okay, bit of a rave, that one. Anyway, we could go into more detail. I think that's enough. All right, now, David Ranali. Should we clone the woolly mammoth and other animals to restore Siberian ecosystems? Would this help with permafrost melting? Interesting question. I'm not sure that we can clone the woolly mammoth. Look, the domestic animals of the world have been incredibly well selected, and there's all these different breed variations out there. So, we've got the animals we need. There's this magnificent selection, and it's all about cell grazing and pasture management in the way that we can use animals to be beneficial to the ecosystem. So their imprinting patterns, their manural patterns, their sequences across landscape in the density to the area to the movement is what it's all about. And with any animal, you can manage in a way that actually repairs and speeds up the successional event of ecosystem recovery. I've even proven you can reforest with goats, and I did that on purpose because that's almost like an oxymoron to say you can reforest with goats. So no problem. You don't need your woolly mammoths. We can do very well with the domestic breed characteristics of different varieties we have, and we can speciate more varieties, and not a problem. It's just a matter of getting in there and doing it. And what we're really doing is we're imitating the large herds of migratory animals that have always been in those positions, whether it's the African savanna or the prairies or the Siberian tundra. You look at what the original animals were like and you use your domestic animals to perform the same functions or even better. There's nothing wrong with improving nature itself by design, because that's what we're good at, right? So we're designing an improved nature. Imagine that. More diverse and more functional than nature itself has ever been. Wow. Okay, now we have Stuart Wilson. Here's a question. Talk about canopy, forest systems, berms. Now it's spelt wrong, but anyway, I think it means berms, and root systems, and how to integrate them. Too many people don't think about the root system when they plant and have huge problems later on. Now, I'm not sure what problem Stuart's referring to here. Is it Stuart? No, it's not. It's Star, sorry. I think I need to slip my glasses on now and again. Yes, it's Star Wilson. So Star Wilson, his question, talk about canopy. The canopy is very interesting in forest systems because we need the canopy as soon as possible, but we can't get a canopy quickly of the species we want to end up with at climax. So at climax, we like a canopy that is 90% productive species most of the time in our most beneficial forests, our food forests, large productive forests. They're very diverse. They imitate the diversity of a natural forest, but with novel productive elements. We'll call them novel. But they're not rapid growers because they're very sophisticated. They end up having sophisticated products. So we have to complete a canopy ASAP to benefit those productive species as they grow, to nurse them, to shelter them, to add soil creative, soil structuring elements. And they're usually fast-growing leguminous species or beneficial species. Now let's just look at the tree species and plant species of the world from one particular aspect right now. There are something like 80% of species, tree and plant species in the world that are neutral. They don't have any beneficial effect. They don't have any negative effects on other plant and tree species. They're just neutral. And 15% are beneficial. Most of them are leguminous species, and some of them have mycelium fungi associates. They're beneficial to other elements around them. In other words, when you put them into a companion plant, they benefit other plants around them. And then only 5% are allelopathic. They disfavor other plants and trees around them. So this is what we have to pay attention to. Let me repeat those numbers. 5% are allelopathic. They're negative to other species around them. 15% are positive, and there are beneficial elements. And of course, we know the peas and beans and leguminous species are the big one and big number. But there are mycelium fungi associates and others. And then 80% are kind of neutral. It doesn't really matter. So what we need to do is we need to look at the benefit of including other species in the successional sequence of establishing forests. Now, they're going to be beneficial above the ground. They're creating shelter, they're creating shade when it's too hot and evaporation's over rainfall, but they're going to be recoverable if we cut them, drop their leaf, twig, and woody material onto the ground. Remember, the soil is an animal that's all mouse. Quote, Mr. Sash. I've forgotten who I'm supposed to be quoting now, who originally said that. But anyway, credit to them. Yeah, the soil is all animal. The soil is an animal that's all mouse, and the fungi are the teeth that eat the wood, and a forest grows on a fallen forest. So we have to make the forest fall. Now, we don't want the productive elements to fall. We want them to go through the canopy. But there's lots of elements we can choose that are beneficial, and when we cut them, they recover. And we can do that in such a way that they recover and put shade over the productive species as they come through. They become nurse crops in this function, not just producing material to the ground and growing a better forest floor, feeding the forest floor, a forest grown on a fallen forest. They're also in function, when we cut them at the right time, they grow shade to nurse the productive species coming through. And you can kill any plant or animal without any pharmaceutical, chemical products by just cutting it and stopping it growing leaves. You cut any large tree, doesn't matter how big and how prolific, cut it down, abuse the trunk, stress it. When it regrows, cut the branches off regularly, every month, every 3 months, even every 6 months, and it will die. It won't take long to die. So we can do this to these support species when ready. So as the canopy of our intended long-term canopy comes closer and closer to climax, our support species are cut out and manipulated. We're designing the way the forest falls. It's a forest falling sequence. It's a successional sequence. We're designing in space and time. You're stacking time, space and time in the same place as the same event. That sort of sounds a bit woo-woo, doesn't it? Stacking time within the sequence of succession. Lovely words. But it's true. This is what we're orchestrating. You can do it in all the climates. It's a wonderful thing. And you can take the large logs and put them on the edge of your contour footpaths, a little bit sort of a little bit of sort of syntropic farming, syntropic-esque. Like not so many footpaths as syntropics, which usually go north-south, but on contour. They'll get wider on the ridges and get narrower as it goes towards the valleys, making like a bow tie pattern. Your ridge lines will be the dissection of falling ridge tracks, because they're you're falling down the center of a ridge track is the most stable track going up and downhill. Your footpaths through your food forest will be more or less on contour, and they'll get closer in the valleys where it's better to have steps and ponds and little dams. Beautiful set of harmonic patterns. So you can put your larger logs on the edge of your forest footpaths, and the smaller branches and twigs and leaves can go as mulch to your fruit trees, your productive trees, whatever they're, fruit trees, productive trees, whatever. They've got some kind of productive element. So we're managing the canopy it goes up. Now our root zone of our support species become compost corridors in the soil as dendritic patterns going out from the trunk into the root zone. A wonderful, amazing pattern. You can't imitate that with a machine. You can only growth patterns will do that for you. So in industrial agriculture, will never achieve a dendritic pattern going backwards like a root zone that we can put down into the soil as compost corridor soakage. Amazing. Star, I hope that sort of says something about your question. It might do. Hope so. It's all about chop and drop and a forest growing on a fallen forest, and we being the ones that manipulate the time spatial sequence event. Okay. I thought I'd have fun with this. Okay. Next one. Now, there's a mate of mine here, Tanya Sprill. Sorry, Tanya. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. Respectful Tanya with the Southern States respectful approach. Dear Sir and family, my question: we have run out of soil, and it does not get hot enough here for 4 big bins of compost to process. We have to wait 2 to 3 years. Temperate climate, Otis, Oregon coast, USA. Well, Tanya, check out my Berkeley compost. I can guarantee if you follow my videos on Berkeley compost, you can make compost in 18 days. It might take 30 days to start with, and then you get more practiced at it. Compost is an art form. There is no question at your climate, you can make compost in 18 days. Now, if it's cold in winter, you may have to move it inside. Now, you can move it into a polytunnel or a glass house, and the heat of the compost, although it being a bit smelly, a bit of a pong sometimes in the early stages, it will partially heat the glasshouse polytunnel as well. Now, follow my instructions. Now, if you can't do 18 days in a row, which is make the pile at the right size, at the right moisture, with the right proportions of ingredients, with the right amount of chopping up to size ratios, and then you leave it for 4 days and turn it every other day for 14. If you can't do that, right, and you can't work out the size you need, make a wire cage that's about 1.5 cubic meters minimum. Don't go to 1 meter, 1 cubic meter, go 1.5 cubic meters. 1 meter is a minimum, but go 1.5 cubic meters. Get a calculation on a round cage of strong wire that clips together. Right? Fill that up with the sequence. A layer of green, a layer of brown, a layer of manure, a layer of green, a layer of brown, a layer of manure. So you've got it up to the top of the 1.5 cubic meter bin full. Get it wet, get it to the right moisture, cover it with a tarp, leave it for 1 week. Then turn it on Monday, turn it again on Wednesday, and turn it again on Friday. Take the weekend off. Do that for 3 weeks. So it's 1 week in a cage. Turn it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then the next week, turn it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The next week, turn it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it will be fine. And I will guarantee 100% that you can make compost where you are in Oregon, and anybody can do it anywhere. We've proved it all over the world. If you want to take the weekends off, it's going to take 28 days. If you don't, you can do it in 18. No problem. We've got the information to share with you. Okay, now, Nazia Shafi, how would you revive a sun-stricken plant? Well, prune the leaves a little bit, take some of the strain off it. So reduce the leaf surface area because it's got to transpirate off those leaves. So if you reduce the leaf surface area, it will reduce the stress straight away and saturate the roots. Right? So make sure that you've got an absolute saturation of the roots and then let it drain. If you can put some worm juice from your worm farm on there, all the better. Right? Any kind of organic liquid fertilizer in dilution, just to give it a little bit of a tonic. And if it's really stressed, cover it, put a cover around it or over it like a shade cloth cover to reduce the sun even further, and it should be fine. That's the best thing you can do. All right. Hannah Kadzova. I might not get the pronunciation of everyone's name right. Kadozova. All right. Hannah. Hello, Geoff. I was wondering if you had any good examples of permaculture farm or resources in tropical highlands. We are based in Iringa, Tanzania, and we receive 1,100 millimeters of rain in 6 months. Then we have 6 months of cool, dry weather. Thank you. I worked in Musoma for Global Resource Alliance, a wonderful small NGO based in Ojai, California, and they do some great work. But they're right down on the shores of Lake Victoria. Now, what I need to know is Tanzania's almost on the equator, right on the equator. If you're at an altitude, we need to know how high, because you're just about wet tropics at sea level. But a climate analog is based on, one, your latitude, and I know you're more or less on the equator, and then your distance from the ocean, and then your altitude above sea level. As you get further away from the ocean, you get hotter in summer and cooler in winter. But also, as you go up in altitude, every 100 meters up is like 1 degree away from the equator. So if you're at 300 meters, you've moved 3 degrees away from the equator in temperature range over the year, but day length doesn't change. You still get sunrise at 6 and sunset at 6. So you're looking for equatorial projects, right? You're looking for equatorial projects at your altitude, at your distance from the ocean. So if you whip around the equator and see whether there's anything in Indonesia, but you can't get far from the ocean on those Indonesian islands. Other parts of Africa. Now, east or west coast can make a difference too. East coasts are generally wetter than west coasts. Generally, it's a generalization. Then you've got Ecuador, right? On the west coast of South America, and there's a lot of climate analogues in Ecuador. We have a lot of projects in Ecuador, but when you tell me that you've got a wet season and dry season, it sounds like you're quite high, and you've moved in latitude because of that 100 meters. Every 100 meters is 1 latitude away from the ocean. Every 100 meters up is 1 latitude away from the equator in climate temperature range over a year. You've moved to the wet, dry tropics, an analog that is similar to the wet, dry tropics, but you've still got the same day length as the equatorial zone. It's not that complicated if you know those formulas. I have to do it all the time. So that's the areas. You might find projects in New Guinea as well, because they're also high altitude next to the tropics. Colombia, Ecuador, they're high altitude. It just depends how high you are. We've got plenty of wet, dry tropics around the world. And then what I would advise you to do is to go on Permaculture Global, which is one of our websites, and search for those type of projects, because people register their projects, and people as individuals register on Permaculture Global, and projects register on Permaculture Global. And it's got a Facebook type of Ruby on Rails software, so you can have followers and following. It has Google Maps and satellite Google imagery like Google Earth, where you can fly in and see all the dots across the world of places and projects that are going to be similar to yours. And that's a starting point anyway. We have Arlok Seti. Hi, Geoff. Hi, Geoff Lawton. It is Carlo and Agnes. We think a good topic would be how important is it to be self-sustainable in so critical a time now, and how permaculture and more resilient approaches can help crucially on the next future. Big hug to you all. Well, big hug to you guys too, but it's not hugging anymore. Not even handshaking anymore. It's like, I'll touch my heart for you. Okay. That was right on the mic. It's going to sound loud. Okay. Well, it's absolutely crucial. I was just trapped in Saudi Arabia, where there's not a lot of local diverse food. And I could see if it went much further, we'd be, there'd be difficulty with food shortages. If planes aren't flying, transport goes down. You really need to have the largest diversity of species growing where you are. Ironically, I'm in a hotel room in Melbourne, and at Zaytuna Farm, we're not connected to the outside world. We have our own drinking water from rainwater tanks. So we have 96,000 gallons of rainwater catchment in water tanks. We have our own electricity. We're standalone, nickel-ion battery bank, all gallium, indium, selenium panels, which are very high-tech panels that don't derate with temperature. So we're standalone on electricity. We're standalone on our drinking water. We have our own waste systems, because we have reed bed grey water, which our biological reed beds filter our grey water, and from our kitchens and our showers and our sinks, and that goes into swales that fertilises areas of the farm that are in production. And we have compost toilets, which don't use much water, and the compost from the compost toilets gradually goes down into forest systems as that converts into tree fertilizer. So we stand alone. And we, oh yeah, by the way, we grow our own food. We produce our own vegetables and our own fruit and our own eggs and our own poultry and small animals, our own fish and our own dairy cows and our own beef cows. And we've had goats and we've had turkeys and we've got ducks and we've had geese and, you know, we've had rabbits and we've had pigeons. We've had all of those things. But generally we've got all our own small animal meat, our large animal meat, our poultry, our eggs, our milk, all our own herbs, all our own medicinals, and it's not hard to do. It's reasonably easy. There's 7 to 10 people on the farm most of the time. A lot of us are working to set up demonstration systems to teach people. We've got our own nursery, of course, and we feed ourselves. We don't try and produce surplus much. We preserve our own pickles and our own ferments and our own vinegars and our herbal tonics and all those things. And obviously, in this situation, it feels like the safest place in the world. and I'm keen to get back there next week. Oh, we have our own horses, so we have our own sustainable transport systems if we want. So we have dogs and cats as well, and we love them all. But that's, you know, all of a sudden it seems like, yeah. And we can do this in a small way. I mean, look at, I'm going to quote one of my great students, Angelo Ecalades, and Deep Green Permaculture is his website. He produces an enormous amount of food on a small garden here in Melbourne, 64 square metres. He has a food forest garden that produces the equivalent of 13.5 tonnes per acre. He has 30 fruit trees on 64 square metres. They're all crammed in close and dwarf-fated and pruned 4 times a year. So they're all low, highly productive, and spreads the season through varieties of apples and plums and different citrus. He has 70 to 80 varieties of vegetables and herbs and 12 different types of berries, and he's documented every gram that comes off the property, and it doesn't take him more than 2 hours work a week to produce all his own food on 64 square metres. So don't tell me you can't do it in a small area, because you can. The diversity that you get out of a small area is greater. The production you get per square metre is greater on the smaller area. The smaller the area, the greater the diversity, the greater the nutritional quality, and the greater the production per square metre, and the less transport, because it's you're growing it where you're eating it. So there is no transport. The larger the area, the more difficult it is to get good production ratios. So most of the time, we're way too big. In fact, we're out of scale, which means we're out of order. We're out of sizes of order of relationship to natural systems. That's a whole nother discussion, the ratios of order of size in nature. But yeah, so this is very, very relevant. And the inquiries are coming in, and this may be a tipping point, or it's a definite move closer to the tipping point that we should all be involved. And because we've gone more online, and we've been online with our teaching for a while now, quite a few years, and we're getting better results for our online course than any other teaching I've ever done. Right now, we're going to be more online about sharing information and how we do it. That's what we're doing right now. That's what this is about. But I also think I've been very keen on setting up local permaculture groups. So I'm very privileged to have started the most successful permaculture group in the world. It's 27 years old this year, and it's still very active, and it influences local government. So I've got a drive to set up local government area, because you influence your local government more than any other government. Forget about the federal, forget about the state government. Your local government's the one you really change. You only ever change things at a local level, really. So I'm developing a startup kit. So I'm going to do it more online, so we can have local government area meetings online like this. and get them fired up quickly, because people are after local relevant information. And we don't have to meet physically anymore, as this virus has proven. We can meet online as a group. And I think those software platforms are going to improve because of this. So that's another great result. And I need a hairdresser. A deficiency of hairdressing at the moment. Nadia's had to cut my hair for me because I haven't been able to get to a hairdresser. That's all right. All these things, we're getting more self-sufficient in every way. All right. Next one. Now, Angela Gibbons, how to create permaculture community in times of lockdown. Oh, Angela, I think I just answered that. I think it's local community permaculture groups, and we can set them up. Hey, anybody here want to help me? We can set this up as a network quite quickly, right? Using platforms that are already in position. So, you know, we can have a local government area. And I want to emphasize this. This is what was one of my successes, local government area. Call your permaculture group, permaculture, and the name of the local government, because it's your local politicians who make the decisions to say you can't have a compost toilet or fruit trees in the street. So local government area permaculture groups, Facebook pages, network, or something like that. Let's get it done. We can do it. We have 27 years experience with Permaculture Noosa in the Noosa Shire on the Sunshine Coast. And we even have articles like Birthing a Permaculture Group. Let's get it up to speed with online startups, because it's required. Now, once you've got a local permaculture group which meets and shares happy little accidents and sad little failures about how permaculture works within your bioregion, you get a bioregion identity. You can even end up printing your own money like they do in Totnes with the Totnes pound that they've spread all over the world, and even have local currencies. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You've got the Ithaca dollar in Ithaca, New York, and you know, many things can happen. But once you've got that group of people interacting, you start to realize who you could live with. I mean, you can love everybody in your community that's involved in permaculture, that's great, but you probably find you can't live with 95% of them. That's just honesty, right? You look at a group, they're all lovely, they're great, you know, but you think, oh, I couldn't live with 95% of them. When you've got a bit of a guilt feeling from thinking that, you can then go, right, who's the 5% I could live with? Because that's 1 in 20. And that's not a bad ratio. Who's the 1 in 20 I could live with? Because I could go through the group and go, yeah, look at that, them, these people, that couple. I could go through thick and thin for them. You know, like I'd risk everything to help those guys. So they're the people you can live with, and you can settle a community. Once you set up a community group that's successful, it gets past all that miscommunication rubbish that we go through. Another thing you can do is what we've done at Zaytuna Farm, and that's taken almost 20 years, right? This is our 18th year. This is our 19th year, I think, 2020 at Zaytuna Farm. And we've developed the place with all the infrastructure in position already. So we've got, you know, 20 plus dams, we've got 3 kilometres of swales, we've got a cattle laneway, we've got a commercial nursery, we've got an education centre, we've got a commercial campground, we've got permission to put in 5 accommodation cabins, we've got a great big workshop, we've got a huge solar system, we've got header tanks, we've got drinking water tanks, we've got all kinds of things that, you know, you don't have to make any decisions about developing Zaytuna Farm. And as I got into my 65th year this year, 66 in 2020. I decided that I better do some forward planning to make sure this all goes ahead without me having to be the champion of it. So we divided the property as a community. We have shares for sale. So we have 7 extra houses we can put on our house, plus another 7. So the local government allowed us to develop a development approval as a community development of 8 shares, equal shareholders owning the farm and equal in the income generator of the campsite and education infrastructure. So everybody who invests in a share of Zaytuna Farm also gets a share in the company that now owns the farm and sells the shares, but also a share in the company that runs the income generator part of it. So you get a bit of security as you buy in, but you get the security of 20 years of my mad development of the infrastructure. We're drought proof, we're fireproof, and we're probably starvation proof. We're pollution proof nearly, but that's a long process, and not everybody wants to invest in that. But if they did, you've got a few millionaires out there who want to do it fast. We can do it. We can do it. You want to sort of develop the whole land first, then sell shares. And developers are coming after us for this. I'm getting the inquiries, can you put a Geoff Lawton's signature landscape in? Even in urban townhouses in Melbourne and developments in Adelaide and Perth, large subdivisions are wanting permaculture mainframe infrastructure as the planning mechanism, like Village Homes, Davis, California have. And we should have copied Village Homes, Davis, California years ago. I mean, it's an icon. It's a pilgrimage site for permaculturists, actually. Anyway, let's carry on. Hope that answered your question, Angela, in some form or another. Matt Johnson, where should I go to get all of your green in the desert knowledge? All of it? I'm going to go mad. And your takeaways from the Saudi trip. I've been asked to go for some consultation in the future near Jeddah. And there are some things I'd like to put in practice here in the Central Valley, California. Well, everything is an anti-evaporation strategy when it comes to deserts, especially ones as hot and as dry as the Arabian Peninsula, where your rainfalls can vary between 70 millimeters, 2.5 inches, to 115 millimeters, 4.5 inches. And a desert is a flood waiting to happen. And that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for that flood, and you need systems big enough to capture as much water as possible and soak it into the soil. Water that's open to the sun is a waste of time. It's just increasing evaporation. Any open bodies of water should be as small as possible, as deep as possible, and as shaded as possible. And that's kind of rare positions. Everything's about rare positions in these dry lands. You want to pick the eyes out of the desert and pick the spots that are easiest. But then if you're doing rehabilitation earthworks where you've got lots of industrial agricultural landscapes that have been totally changed and you want to rehabilitate them, often you're dealing with center pivot irrigation, which are big circles that are absolutely flat or more or less flat, close to flat, because that's the only way they work, which are totally unnatural. And it's going to take a long time for wind and water flows to bring them back into harmonic desert patterns. Also, there's a lot of earth mounds put up to buffer those big floods when they come, because you often get a year's rain in one day. You often get half a year's rain in one day. Every other year you'll get that easy. And every few years you're going to get all the year's rain in one day, which is massive. But that's 10 years worth of rain if you hold it all compared to what you could normally soak. So it's a matter of stop it, spread it, soak it. So apart from picking the right geological spots which have the catchment and putting in gabions, and you have to put big ones in big rocks, well built. They've proven earthwork technology that goes back thousands of years. So you can't say they don't work. They only don't work if you're not brave enough to make them big enough, because people don't realize the power of the desert flood. If you ever get a chance to walk around in one of those floods during the day it's raining, it's a lesson you'll never, ever forget. So either you're in these geological positions, or you can take, which I've just been able to do, take the advantage of the infrastructure of the center pivot. The pipe is usually there, and start at just downhill, on the downhill side of the large pipe in the center pivot, and run your levels out from there And don't hold them straight. Go with nice curves of the slight variations of level on the centre pivot that's been abandoned. I mean, this is centre pivot work that's been abandoned or people want to abandon. And run out swells as far as you can until you hit water flows on waddies, no matter how small or large, and build there your gabion walls at an accurate height that the overflow on the gabion is at least 0.5 metre higher than the entrance to your swale coming into the silt field, which is going to build up behind the gabion. Put a small gabion entrance wall to the swale so that it doesn't fill up with silt, and the water percolates through the small gabion wall, floods the swale, and soaks a lot of your water from the flow coming down the waddy that's built your silt field. It's pacified once you've got the silt field because it's perfectly level, the silt field. And that then allows you to fast track your tree establishment, because it's all about re-establishing desert ecosystems that are then beneficial to add to once you've got extra shade, once you've got organic matter, and once you've got wind buffering. But with the industrial agriculture infrastructure still in position underground and pumps still there, you can flood with the water that was being misused to grow annual crops and was sold in the landscape, because all desert aquifer water is a little bit salty. If you aim it at highly evaporative systems, you salt the landscape. But if you aim it at anti-evaporation systems, which are very hardy desert pioneer trees initially, you don't necessarily salt it on greatly diminish the amount of water you need to use, and any surplus soaks back to the aquifer because you've got rehydration soakage systems, earthworks, but you're also growing shade, wind buffering, and organic matter production. And now we're going back towards a repatterned ancient desert forest scenario that we can start to interact with between the patterns. So they've just given you a golden nugget of advice here that can be very, very useful, because there are millions of centre pivots around the world that are going to have to be repatterned. And there's a convenience here where the problem is potentially the solution to move the deserts into recovery rapid. Now, once we do that, we can go up into our geological positions where there's ideal spots in waddies and canyons and high catchments where you can put in the fancy stuff that's actually a little bit more difficult to do because you're in constructed space. The rocks are there. You don't have to ship the rocks very far, but the earthworks is a little bit more constrained. And as you get higher, you go into manual work, which we can do once we see success. You know, it's fine. There's mass employment capabilities there. And the deserts become a very, very healthy place to live. Deserts always have been very, very healthy to live in their natural form. It's some of the best food, some of the highest in nutrient. There's not many diseases and funguses and problems in deserts if you live in those ideal positions. But they're also the easiest to damage and keep damaged. And once you go into chemical agriculture, it's some of the most toxic food. So, you know, it's everything's a balance. The best becomes the worst. The worst can become the best again. You know, it's like, that's the wonderful thing about the world. So I'm going to pull it up there and I'm going to carry on. I only got to question 11, and on this run I've got let me see, I've got 112 questions. So I've got 101 to go just on the first innings. I'll try and do a bit better tomorrow, but let's see how this goes. And we'll keep plugging away. And I like it. I like answering your questions. I'm having a bit of fun. Hopefully you're enjoying it. And I'll see you on the next round.